Welcome to the show, Suzyn Waldman. We have one of the greatest voices in, I'd say, radio history, in my opinion, and broadcasting history, because we can't group you into any category here. It's fair to put you in an all category, as she is one half of the voice of the New York Yankees. Suzyn Waldman, how are you?
I'm terrific. Now, did you know that I used to broadcast basketball for St. John's?
No, I did not.
See that? Louis was, I think it was Louis's last year coaching, maybe 2 years, and then Brian came in after him. Yeah, I used to do, I did it with David Halberstam for a few years, long before you were born, but I loved it. The campus probably doesn't look the same as when I was driving to those games in the gym, but I loved it over there, and I loved Coach Louis, and I loved that. I love doing that. I think
Yes.
everybody's retired, though, now.
Oh, yeah. And Coach Louis is probably one of the nicest people that you ever dealt with of all time.
Absolutely, because I was in theater before I did this, and he used to refer to me as the opera singer, and I used to say, "No, no, no, Louis, it's Broadway." He said, "No, you're an opera singer." Anyway, I loved it. It was great times. I had a great
Yes.
time down there.
Yeah, St. John's is, I never knew that. So I'm sure the people listening are stoked to hear that.
It's a long time ago, boy. It was just when I started. It was in the '90s sometime, and I used to drive. I live out in Westchester, and I used to drive to Queens, and I just loved it. I loved the gym. I loved the whole. I loved the whole atmosphere. I just thought it was just great. I had a wonderful time.
Yeah, that's probably the last time St. John's had a great coach, actually.
Well, I don't know. There are people that would disagree with you. You have to have players too. So
Yeah, you do. You got that right. But you said that you wanted to get in the theater. That's right. You played Dulcinea.
Dulcinea. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
no. I was on Broadway for 15 years before I did this. I didn't come to New York to do this. I mean,
Yeah.
there wasn't anything. When I came to New York, I worked in theater, and I was never famous. I always worked though, and I had one show that I did all the time because it's very difficult for a woman. There's one woman in it, and not that many people could do it, and that was Mana La Mancha, and there was always a need for that, and yeah, and I bought my house with Mana La Mancha actually, so it was a terrific time, and I did a lot of other shows too, and I did a lot of nightclub work, and then as I started to get a little older, the music was changing, and I wasn't changing with it, and I was going to be do revivals the rest of my life or start playing somebody's mother, and I figured I'd better find something else to do. And you know what, Max, the only other thing I really knew was sports, and I figured to myself, I'm working here, and this is long before FAN. And it was a friend of mine, the late Ken Coleman. He was the voice of the Boston Red Sox for years and years and years. And in the mid '80s, he said to me, I got this friend, and he's starting this radio station, WFAN. I know something. They're going to have an all sports station. He's got to meet you because sports was always. That's how I kept saying. I always went to sporting events and was really part of it. And yeah, and I went and I made him a tape and got a job, and then it sort of changed my life. But theater was my first love, and that's why I came to New York.
And being from Massachusetts, was it hard being a Yankee fan, converting? Because I know if you really don't like the Yankees, it's usually you can't really like them ever.
No, that's not true. I mean, that really isn't true. This is my job. I've been here a really long time
Yeah.
now, but I grew up in Newton, Massachusetts, and I had my own season ticket to Fenway Park when I was 3, and I loved the Red Sox. Of course, you love who you grew up watching,
Yeah.
and when you go into journalism, you don't become fans of teams anymore. You become fans of people because it's your job.
Yeah.
And I don't know this whole thing about why you have to be a fan of a team to broadcast their games. I mean, do you know that the voice of the Boston Red Sox grew up in New Haven and was a Yankee fan? I mean, it's
Yeah.
not. I don't know when this started, but I've been with the Yankees now. This is my 35th year, and I've ridden on the buses with them, and I'm very obviously very attached to this
Yeah.
group. Not this group particularly, but the Yankee organization, and Mr. Steinbrenner was very pivotal in my career, and I owe them a lot. And I think when you're a journalist, you stop being a fan. I mean, it makes my job easier, quite frankly, if they win. I mean,
Yeah.
what are they supposed to stay on the radio for 4 hours a day? They're losing. Hey, we're losing 14-0, but isn't it a beautiful day? I mean, you have to be honest and you have to say it, but it's not being a fan. It's being a broadcaster, which is very, very, very different. Of course, I want the Yankees to win. I mean, if any broadcaster that says they don't want their own team to win is lying. It makes your job a lot easier. You know, if it's 14-0, I could hear people clicking off the radio, and that you don't want to do. So.
No.
There are certain Yankee teams that will be part of my soul for the rest of my life, and the people on those teams, and you know, you don't forget that. Knicks teams also.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, that's when I started covering the Knicks and doing pre and post. Rick Pitino was the coach. I mean, you don't think I love Mark Jackson? I mean, I've known Mark Jackson since he was a rookie. I loved his mother, Mama Marie. We used to call her, sitting in the garden. Back then, you became part of it, and the people become part of your lives. It's not necessarily the teams; it's the people. You'll see. You'll see as you go on this career. There are people that you're going to love, and there are people that will be part of you forever. And then there are people that, you know, when they get traded, it's okay. Have a nice life.
Thank God you call the Yankees, because if you call the Knicks, I think it would be a miserable time, because they have very few bright spots.
Yeah, no, this is tough. That game has changed, and you know, and that's also, you know, it's a different game now than it was when I was covering. And you know, somebody had said about baseball now. Somebody said, well, this isn't your father's Yankees anymore, and I said, not my father's Yankees. It's not my Yankees. I don't know what they're doing, but you know, the games have changed. But you have to grow with it a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Something that I was reading online when doing my research is that when you were at the Fan, you were going through difficult times. People were trying to edit the tapes to make you sound worse than anything, just to get you off the station.
Well, I was always the only woman everywhere. And it was a nasty time. And, you know, and I used to get like used, I used to get used condoms in the mail and feces in the mail. And in '89, I had my own police detail at Yankee Stadium because someone was literally trying to kill me. And it's just an amazing thing when, you know, you can handle that kind of stuff because there's a backlash. And, you know, not only did the person telling the people on the air, telling fans about their Yankees and their Knicks, it was a woman, and she had a Boston accent. So that also played into it. But it's not that. Fans you win over, and they know if you're real or not in 5 minutes. And it wasn't that. It was that, you know, I sat in Yankee Stadium in the press box for a solid year in '87 when we went on the air. Nobody talked to me. That's the worst of it. And it was just a terrible time, and people at the station would do things, as you said, to my tapes. I would send back, you know, in those days you would literally cut tape and you sent it back, and they would, like, I'd hear my interviews, and there would things that would be moved and things that would be cut to make it sound like I was an idiot, which by the way I wasn't. But it's either you stay and you fight because there are people coming up behind you. And I always had this feeling, Max, that if I ever quit and left, there wouldn't be a woman sitting in my seat. Wherever I was sitting, it was going to be a man replacing, because they just say, see, she couldn't take it. She couldn't handle it. She couldn't do it. And so you just keep going. But it was a nasty time. You know how I just told you that there are people that are in my heart for being wonderful? There's the other people, too. So,
Yes.
you know, I don't forget them either. So
You use them as a dartboard.
Yeah, no, it all comes around, though. I don't, you know, spend energy on it, but every 5 or 6 years, someone will be standing in front of me, and I'll get a chance to really destroy them. On the outside. And then, oh yeah, remember what you did to me in 1988? Well, because of that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, so there we go.
And thank God, because you are the first woman in sports full time.
Right. To do it.
The color commentator.
They're to do a major league team, and you know, and the basketball, it was a lot easier to do basketball. Nobody ever I did, you know, when I was doing basketball commentary and a little play-by-play, I did the WNBA for a while, way back when I first started, and I did the NIT, and I did a lot of college, and there was never a problem in basketball with being a woman. I'm not quite sure what that is. There's a whole other thing that goes along with that, but it was never a problem. But, you know, you start doing play-by-play for baseball, and people come out of the woodwork, don't want you. Though it's not like that now. I see that there are a lot of really young, talented women coming up. It's taken 2 generations to skip, but I can name you 6 women that are in their 20s that are out doing play-by-play for minor league teams all over this country. So it's taken a very long time, but maybe it's starting to change. But you know what? It's not just getting there. You have to stay there. I mean, I had a lot of chances, and I was my first radio game actually was a Mets game. It was a Mets Houston series in Houston in the 90s, 1992. At the Astrodome. I went with Gary Cohen, and Bob Murphy didn't want to go to Houston, so I went. They thought it was a good idea. That was 1992. I didn't get my full-time radio job till 2005. That's a long time between. I mean, I did television and things in between there, but it's not only getting the opportunity, it's learning how to stay there. And anybody that expects anybody, male or female, to come out on their first shot and be Vin Scully, it's not going to happen. It doesn't happen. It took Vin Scully years to become Vin Scully. And so that's the thing that happens with women. You have to be perfect, because if you make a mistake, it's in the paper. So, yeah,
men are rotten. They can be very rotten.
Oh, you know what? I think it's people. I don't think that at all. I don't think that about men at all. I think it's people, and people that don't like change, and people that see maybe their job being taken away by a female. And I don't think there's I don't think there's an 18-year-old intern that doesn't, in the back of his mind, think he knows more about the Yankees than do I. He's wrong, but it's just a thing. But I don't think, that's, men are the most important thing in my life, pretty much, as far as people are concerned. So, because that's all I've worked around is mostly. So it's not men. It's just people. People are afraid. People don't like change.
Something that would lead me to believe about the men thing too is when I read the comments when Maggie Gray was hired for WFAN to do the afternoon drive. I saw the comments on Instagram. People were like, "I don't need a woman telling me my sports."
Well, I mean, see, but that's a certain type of person. It's not, she's good. She's there. I mean, it's like you have to be there. People don't. I think it's just people don't like change, and people don't like to admit that their long-time beliefs are incorrect. And that's, if I've believed my whole life that the world is flat, and somebody says, no, it's not, what does that mean for my life, what I've believed all these years? And I don't think it's necessarily against women. I think it's protecting your own beliefs, which is very different. And you don't want to make this a them against us thing, because the more polarized everybody gets, the worse it is for everybody in every walk of life. It's not just women in sports. It's women as doctors. It's women as lawyers. And the world is, we're not living in 1872. We're not living in 1962 either. And so that's it. I think it's people that just don't want to change what their long-held beliefs are.
Mm-hmm. You're right. And we got to look back at Betty Kaywood and Mary Shane, because they played important roles in history for women.
Well, Mary Shane, I did not know her, but Mary Shane is an example that I use a lot, because Mary Shane, she was a writer, and I don't know, I asked people in Chicago, was she any good? But to me, what they did to Mary Shane, they set her up to fail. Because when you are given, because I went through it too, 20 years later, but I went through it. And when you say, all right, you're going to give 20 games, and that's it. And then they'll decide. You can't change careers, even if you've got the knowledge. And she was a baseball writer. She knew what she was talking about. She covered the White Sox. She knew what she was talking about. But you have to learn vocal technique. You have to learn how to be a broadcaster. See, that's something I never needed to do because I was an actress. So it's a performer. It's all performing. And it's all the same thing. But if you don't know how to do that, I don't know how anybody expected her to be brilliant in 20 games. It doesn't happen. Nobody helped her. That's for darn sure. Yeah. And you have to do it yourself, and it's hard to do if you're not given a shot. And then that was the end of that. She did, I must admit, she was a terrific basketball writer, went to New England and worked for, I think it was the Worcester Telegram, and covered the Celtics. And that's where I had first heard of her. I didn't know about the baseball thing. But that's women not being qualified to do the job they're hired to do, but are hired because they're women. And it never works. Never.
What'd you love most about being on TV? Because you were on WPIX, I believe, in the 90s.
Well, I did a lot. I was
Yeah.
in 94. The guy who runs the Yes Network now, John Filippelli, started a thing called the Baseball Network, and that was an idea. We worked for 2 years, and I did a lot of national games that the Yankees were involved in. I loved television. That was what you do is, like, if the Yankees were playing the Texas Rangers, there would be a Yankee. I would be the Yankee announcer, and my first guy I worked with is a pitcher named Steve Busby, who at the time was the play-by-play announcer for the Texas Rangers, and we would work together. And it was a fabulous idea, and it was national but regional. And Monday night or Tuesday night was the Baseball Network. And when we went to Seattle, I would do the game with Dave Niehaus, the Hall of Famer, and it was great fun. It should have worked, but it didn't. And I loved television. I prefer radio because I like the creating the picture. In television, you are putting a caption on something that people can see. When you're in radio, you have to describe what's going on because the people cannot see, and it's a whole different skill set. I did games for MSG and for WPIX and Fox 5 when they were on. I loved television. I love radio. I prefer radio. That's where I belong, I think.
I think so too. What's your opinion on how radio's changed over the years?
Well, they tell me that it's dead.
Yeah, that's what they tell me, even though I don't agree with that.
I don't, there's always going to be people that turn, I mean, I know I'm old and I don't stream anything. I want to get in my car and turn to the radio and hear the Yankee game or hear a game or whatever. It has, obviously, as they call it, terrestrial radio now. I didn't know that, but it is changing. And I guess people don't sit in the car and listen to radio. They download music or podcasts. I've never understood why anyone would listen to a podcast.
Yeah, I don't either.
It's something that's in the past, and I don't get it at all. But as long as there are people that are by themselves and want company and want a human connection, there's always going to be radio, because you cannot get that connection on television. You really can't, or streaming. And when you turn on the radio to listen to a talk show host or a baseball game, you are connecting with a human being, and that's why I don't think it'll ever die. It can change, but it'll always be there in some form.
You also played an important part in stopping the feud between George Steinbrenner and Yogi Berra.
Well, that was one of the best days I ever had. It turned out to be great. That took a lot. George Steinbrenner was I was very close to George Steinbrenner, and I had never met Yogi Berra, and I didn't know. And Phil Rizzuto actually introduced me to Yogi Berra once. Actually, it was Mel Allen's funeral, and I couldn't even imagine, because of course we all know and love Yogi Berra, and I had never met him, and the then program director of WFAN, this is 1999, had said, Yogi Berra is opening a museum in New Jersey, and we're going to broadcast there from his opening night, and you're going to do the show. And I said, okay, that'll be fine. And he said, wouldn't it be cool if you could have George and Yogi make up on the air? And I said, yeah. And then he started talking about, the 73 Mets. They were going to have them all there and we do all this stuff. So George called me about something, and I said, all right, let me try this. So I said, George, I want to talk to you about Yogi. And he said, what's wrong? And, they hadn't talked in 14 years. And as soon as he said, what's wrong, I said to myself, okay, go for it. And I said, I think this is time. It's time for you guys to make them. This is absolutely ridiculous. He said, all right, we'll do it during the season. I said, no, we have to do it now. And we have to do it on January, whatever it is, because I'm going to be, and he laughed. And he said, all right, well, what do I have to do? I said, you have to come to New Jersey. This is in January. You have to come to New Jersey, and he wants you to apologize. And he said, well, what does he want me to apologize for? And I said, I don't know, George. You did it. I have no idea. I wasn't there. So we and I was trying to protect George because I didn't know Yogi.
Mhm.
So I put this together. Dale Berra, Yogi's son, and I were um, doing this on the phone. All right, what if we do this, and what if we do that, and what if we do this? And we were going to do it on the show, and he was going to come. Here was the thing. Well, we weren't allowed to tell anybody that it was going to happen. But meanwhile, I'm saying, all right, this is going to be okay. So I called Ted Williams, I called Joe Garagiola, I called Bill White, I called everybody that was Yogi's friend, just in case it worked. We were going to have them on. And I'm thinking, if this doesn't work, I'm going to be stuck talking about the 73 Mets for 3 hours, and I have no idea what to talk about. So the night came, and George comes, and he flew in, and I'm there by myself with Dale Berra and his brother Tim, and George. They open the door, and Yogi says to George, "You're late." And George starts out, "No, I'm not. I'm right on time." And they go into a room, and I hear yelling. And I said, "Oh God, my career is over. Everything is over, and I'm going to have to talk to Ed Kranepool for 3 hours, and I have no idea what to ask him." And we can talk about the '73 Mets, okay? And then Carmen Berra, a beloved, wonderful woman, Yogi's wife, went in, and the yelling stops, and they come out, and they're arm in arm, and I'm thinking, oh God, this is great. And we sit down, and we're in an empty auditorium in Yogi's museum, and this is just opened, and it's totally empty, but there's probably 300 seats in it. We go on the air. I said, "Oh, very good evening, everybody. I am Suzyn Waldman. I am live at the brand new Yogi Berra. Mr. Berra, you know Mr. Steinbrenner. Mr. Steinbrenner, you know Mr. Berra, right?" And they start laughing, and we had everybody on. But I'll tell you, Max, the best thing, within 5 minutes, the back of the auditorium where there was a door, the doors kept opening. People heard it on the radio and were running in from the store, from the gym, people coming in with briefcases. They had gotten off the train, and they hear the two of them talking to each other. And within a half an hour, that there was no more room for anybody to sit in that auditorium. It was great. And I called, and Ted Williams was on, and Joe Garagiola, and everybody that we had. It was great. And then after about an hour, George was getting a little fatigued, and he said we were going back to the hotel. It was really great. And then, of course, I talked about the 73 Mets, but I was so excited about all of it that it didn't even matter. So I get back home, and George is in the hotel, and I call Mr. Steinbrenner, and I say, what did you think, George? And he said, it was a wonderful night for the New York Yankees. That he stopped, because George was always very sarcastic with me, and he said, "It wasn't too bad for you either, Waldman, was it?" So I said no. But then Yogi and Carmen became some of my best friends. We'd go out together, and I couldn't remember a time. We were out one place at the Carlisle seeing our good friend Steve Tyrell sing, and I said, I can't remember a time when I didn't know you guys. And it wasn't like that. I mean, I had never met him until 1999. So, but then George and Yogi became, really close again. And Yogi was always there. Shogi was always talking to people, and you should have seen the players. You'd have loved this, because when Joe Torre and Yogi were really good friends, and so he would come and sit in Joe's office, and you'd see Posada running in, and they'd be sitting and talking and all that stuff. And when the Yankees got Brian McCann, remember that? They signed Brian McCann.
Remember that.
The first thing he wanted to know was, when's Yogi coming? When is Yogi coming? And they would make a beeline to Joe's office when they heard Yogi was there. Excuse me. It was just a wonderful time. And then he became like the maitre d' of the Yankees, and I thought it was great. And I'm so happy for him that he got to enjoy that for the last years of his life.
And that's important history. As we get into other history, 2009 was an important year for the Yankees, but more importantly for you, is you're the first woman to call a World Series.
I was indeed, and my scorecard is in the Hall of Fame and all that. And it was, it's when you're. I'm always like the first person, and you always get the feeling. Believe me, I know who used to sit in that seat. I mean, I don't mean in that particular chair, but in that seat. I understand it, and I also understand that if I mess up, someone's not going to get a chance, and that sort of drives you with that. So now it's not a big deal. Well, it still is a big deal, but it's not now people expect to hear a women, and the women that are out there now in the minor leagues, as I was talking about, they're in their 20s. They grew up listening to me. They grew up when they were tiny little girls turning on a radio, and there was another girl on the radio. So they don't know that they can't do this because there I was. So what do you mean I can't? It never enters your head. If there's another woman doing, whether military, firefighter, whatever, if you see another person and it's a woman and you're a tiny little girl, you don't know that you can't do this, because there she is. And that's the good thing about all of this, is that I might have been the first, but I sure am not going to be the last.
No, you got that right. Do you remember the first time that you worked with John Sterling on the air? Do you remember that?
I do, but it wasn't a game.
Wow.
In 1987, this is when I met John Sterling. 1987, when WFAN was on the air, I was hired to do afternoon updates from 3 to 7. And in those days, when the station went on the air, we did full 5-minute updates. Don't forget, no computers, nothing. It's rip and read off of a ticker, if you don't know what that is, everybody listening, go Google it, ticker. And you do an update. So you were wrong a lot because they were wrong. No computers. You did it all by yourself. And the man that they had hired to do afternoon drive for WFAN when it first started was a man named Pete Franklin. And he was from Cleveland, and he was supposed to come, but he had a heart attack and he was in the hospital, so he didn't come. So they had different people every week. And an all-star week, July whatever, when FAN first went on the air, there was John Sterling, the voice of the Atlanta Braves at the time. And he used to do talk shows before he went to Atlanta on MCA here in New York. He was a very good talk show host. He was one of the beginning of the guys that told you were stupid. John Sterling did it before any of these guys. John Sterling did it in the 70s. He was telling, you're an idiot, slam. So he would do that then. So John came in, and I was his update person, 1987. So I have known John Sterling since then. And we were talking on the air because, I'd have to sit there. I'd go do my update, but at 3:30 in the afternoon, scores don't change a lot. So we became friends. You know what I remember about that first week, Max? John did the entire show standing up. He would, like he used to do his basketball games, stand up. They weren't at a table. He would stand up, and he'd have a microphone up that was standing on the desk, and it was high, like the old time announcers, with his little thing in his ear, and he would do that. And I thought it was the most fascinating thing I'd ever seen. He did an entire show for 4 hours standing up. But that's when we became friends. So in '89, when he joined the Yankees, we've known each other a really, really long time. So yeah.
It's amazing that you guys established that great chemistry, as you hear it on the air all the time. And that's why people love listening to you guys. What do you think is their favorite call of all time, especially his too, because he has all those catchphrases anytime the Yankees score a home run?
Well, when it started, and now everybody wants them. That's why, he didn't have them for everybody. It started with Bernie Goes Boom. And it was during the playoffs, Bernie Goes Boom. And I thought that was great. And then I loved, Georgie Juiced one, and I loved Cano, Don't You Know, and I loved an A-bomb from A-Rod. But now people come into the team and they want to know what John's home run call is going to be for them. I got to tell you a funny story because the wonderful Todd Frazier, who was a Yankee fan, I've known him forever, obviously here, and hopefully he brings home an Olympic gold. But Todd Frazier, I get home from Ryan Lamar's first game, he hit a home run, and there's a message on my voicemail, and it's from Todd, and he said, Suze, you got to tell John he's got to have a home run call for Ryan Lamar. And he says, how about Lamar, you're the best by far. And he said, I'll talk to you later, whatever. But I called John and I said, Todd Frazier just called me. Want to know why you don't have a home run call for Ryan Lamar? John said, who knew he was on the team? But anyway, so now he has a home run for everybody. But it got to be, he calls it a cottage industry, because the players come and they want to know what the home run call is. The only one who didn't like his, he changed his because Nick Swisher came in, and John at one point said something like "jolly old Saint Nick." Well, Swish didn't like that, so we're on the plane one night, and Swish comes back. He says, "John, I need another call. I don't like that." So that's how Swishalicious came up, because Swish didn't like jolly old Saint Nick. So I think since Bernie Goes Boom was the first one, that's my favorite.
Or You're on the Mark to Share. I remember that one.
Yeah, no, he had a million of them that are great, and some of them, and the Candy Man for the Grandy Man, and a lot of them, since I'm in theater, was in theater for all these years. A lot of them are obscure unless you're a theater person, and he does, and I think they're wonderful. The Gio Urshela, The Most Happy Fella, one of the most famous musicals of all time, is The Most Happy Fella. It was 1957, and he sings, "I'm the most happy fella." And now, if you're not of a certain age and you're not a Broadway person, you have no idea what he's doing. But I'm hoping that people Google it. I say it to so many people: Google "Most Happy Fella," you'll find out all about it. And so he does it, and the people seem to love it. People absolutely seem to love it.
And even when Holiday was on the team, you were singing "Happy Holidays."
Happy holidays, right? Oh, yeah. And they come through at an alarming rate here. Yeah. So it's great.
And speaking of singing, people know you for singing the national anthem back in the day. Not even because you had the opportunity to perform the national anthem this year.
Well, I did. I've done it twice this year, but one of the how it started was in the 70s. When I was on tour with Man of La Mancha, starring Richard Kiley. Google it. He was the original. And I didn't do matinees because Richard didn't do matinees. And whatever city we were in, we were out for almost 2 years with this tour, and off and on. And I wanted to go to ball games. And in those days, nobody realized it was a way to get on television. I just wanted to go to a ball game. So I would call, for example, the first one I did was in Minneapolis, in the old park, not even the Dome. There was another park before that in Bloomington. And I called up the Minnesota Twins and I said, "Hi, this is Suzyn Waldman. I'm starring in Man of La Mancha. Do you need an anthem singer?" And the guy said, "Sure. Nobody's sung the anthem here since the 50s. Sure, go ahead, whatever you want to do." They sent a car for me, and this was every place I went in 79. Every place I went, they sent a car. You were part of it. It was great. I got to have lunch with the players. It was great stuff. I just wanted to go to ball games. All right, then it turned out that, and I used to do it because I grew up in Boston, I would sing almost every opening day. I would find my way back to Boston and sing opening day. In 79, we ended up in Pittsburgh in all of September and October. So I got to sing the anthem. That was the We Are Family team, and I would sing a couple of times a week. I would sing matinee days, and then I got to sing in the playoffs in the World Series. So that's how that had started. And a lot of this is all connected, because when I sang it was a Red Sox Minnesota game. I was sitting in the dugout talking to Jim Rice, just talking, and he was telling me, it was in May, and he was telling me, and he had a great 78, if you remember. Jim Rice was on fire all the time. And he said, I haven't seen a fastball in 2 months. And I said something like, "So you're telling me that you're hitting 315 by accident?" And he started, laughing, and we talked about curveballs and what you have to do, and it was great. Well, there was a guy in back of me waiting to say hello to me, and he used to be the first baseman for the LA Dodgers, and I had never seen him before, and I've never seen him since. And his name was Wes Parker. But he wanted to be in theater, and he wanted to do TV. And if you look at some old Brady Bunch reruns, Wes Parker is on those shows.
Oh, wow.
So I turned around, he introduced himself, and he and some people had gone to see Man of La Mancha the night before. They were going, I guess. And he said, "By the way, before we get into this, have you ever thought of doing this for a living?" And I said, "Doing what for a living?" And he said, "Well, if you could get Jim, I could never get Jim Rice to tell me about curveballs and what he's seeing and why." And I said, "Oh, okay, that's great. Now what can I do for you?" And then we talked about theater and acting and stuff. And that was the last time I saw him, but it put something in my mind. And it was just, it was an interesting times, because I was evolving, they were evolving. I'm sorry, my phone's.
No, it's perfectly fine.
That's my, yeah, that's text. I was just making sure that nobody else was traded because I have to keep up. So I'm sorry, I shut it off. So that I was evolving, it was evolving, and but it put something in my mind. And I wish I could thank Wes Parker. I'm sure he's in LA somewhere, but it's kind of cool. The whole thing was kind of cool.
And speaking of important things in your career, Simmons College, graduating with a degree in economics.
Mm-hmm. I did, and Simmons just gave me an honorary doctorate, and this is why when the guy called me, I got it this year, and it was all what do you call it, virtual. It's on my wall here somewhere. I got a doctor of journalism, and this is when the bursar or whatever it was that called me, the provost called me to tell me that we're giving you, this was supposed to happen last year before the pandemic. And first words out of my mouth were, "Are you sure you've got the right person? Do you know about my checkered Simmons career?" And he said, "Yeah, we know all about you." And let me tell you why I asked him that. This is the 60s, and Max, I was a little terror. I didn't like having to be back in my dorm at 9:30 at night. Simmons was across the street from Fenway Park, so I went every day. I also sang in shows at Harvard and mostly at MIT. I was a special student at the New England Conservatory, but I didn't like the rules that Simmons had. I didn't like them at all. And so I was on social probation a couple of times. Once I was climbing over the wall at 11 o'clock at night because I was dating the captain of the Harvard track team, and track meets are at night. So they caught me coming over the wall. I mean, this is this early 60s. This is before we were trying to change things. Then I was doing, I majored in economics so I wouldn't have to write any papers because it's math, and either you knew it or you didn't. So that's why I chose economics. And my first year of economics, the first year there was a professor, and he was reading out of a book. And I said to him, "Okay, if you can't prepare a class every week, I can't be here, and I'll see you at the final exam." So I would go to ball games and that. And then a friend of mine who was at MIT had said, "Who's teaching economics here? Why don't you order Paul Samuelson?" Who, Google it. Paul Samuelson was one of the most famous and most brilliant economists in the world. He worked for many, many different presidents, but he was teaching at MIT. So Simmons did give me permission to go and audit. And the second time I was on probation was that the dean called me in and said, "Suzyn, you can't sing and go to class." And I said, "Well, I can sing and pass the exams. But you never said anything about going to class." And she said, "You have to make a choice." And I said, "No, I do not. And when I am a big Broadway star, I am going to buy Simmons and turn it into a bowling alley." And I slammed the door and went out. I never left Simmons. I did graduate a degree in economics and math. It was a double economics. And then, and so when they called me, I just said, "Really?" And he said, "No." But then you realize, I'll tell you what I realized in that, and I know this is very long-winded, but Simmons, they never kicked me out. They never really disciplined me. They let me do what I needed to do, but within their structure. I never left. I never did bad things, but they let me push the limits. But I think I could do that because they were there. It's like you being at St. John's. You can do whatever you want, but they're always going to be there. And they'll push back. Mm-hmm. That's how we learn to draw outside the lines. But as long as you can stay inside the lines when it matters. But you learn to push boundaries. So I learned that years ago. So that was one of the reasons that they gave me an honorary doctorate in journalism. So it was kind of moving, continued. Don't forget, 60s, I was also back then working for Bobby Kennedy, and we were trying to do women's rights, and we marched and all kinds of things. And, that was a very turbulent time. Wow. And so it was, it seems very innocent now with what's going on now, because things haven't changed all that much. But
no, I agree with you on that. It's going to, hopefully it continues to change in the right way. And I think we have to get into this, as this is probably one of the most touching moments in sports, was when 9/11 happened. The Yankees, when they come back, they win their game.
I'll tell you a story about 9/11 that I actually watched. I was going to work at that time at WFAN in the stadium. The studio was in Astoria at the time. And I was doing 10 to 2 with Jody McDonald. And so I'd leave my house at 7 in the morning. I live in Upper Westchester. And I was driving down, and I remember calling Don Imus. I got to where the Bruckner hits the Triborough. And so you can see Lower Manhattan. There was a plane sticking in the side of the building, and the police were moving us over to the right. And there was a man next to me, and I can still see him. He was next to me in a small blue car, and he had a bran muffin on his console. And he was moving over, and we were all moving over, and we stopped there. And I called the station, and I actually saw the second plane hit the tower. And the second plane that came over from the right, as I was telling FAN, I don't know what's going on here. Some idiot went into the World Trade Center. We all thought some guy with a little plane had a heart attack. I mean, because you didn't know. It was 8:30 in the morning. And then the second plane came over, and I watched it go into the tower. And they put me on the air with Don Imus because I was describing it. And I remember looking at that man next to me, and he looked, and our eyes met. And I think of every year on 9/11, I think of that man. Where was he going? Did he get there? Was someone he knew in the building? What happened? And I'll tell you the most touching moment of all. The Yankees were, I think it was the next day or so, the game was canceled that we were there. And the Yankees, Joe Torre got a bus together, and we all went down to the World Trade, that whole area there where people were waiting to find out about their loved ones. Nobody knew that they weren't going to find anybody then. It was way back. And you walked into this church, and I remember Bernie Williams saying to Joe, what do I say to these people? And Joe said, you'll know. And they walk in, and I get all choked up just thinking about it. And a woman is looking, and she sees that, she's got a picture of whoever was lost there on her chest, because they all had pictures of, have you seen so-and-so? And she sees that it's Bernie, and she sees that the Yankees are there. And she walks up to Bernie, and Bernie says, you look like you need a hug. And she started to cry. I'm going to start to cry again because I've never seen anything like it. And Bernie hugged her, and they started talking. And I watched what just the presence of these men getting off a bus, the New York Yankees, being in that, it might have been a church, just being there with people, talking to them, just the fact that these people that have just suffered the worst tragedy in their whole lives knew that the New York Yankees cared. Roger Clemens would show up at fire stations unannounced, just walk in. What can I do? And they'd want to sit and talk. Can I bring you things? Do you need, can I raise money for, he just walked into fire stations all over Manhattan. Wow. And, people don't know a lot about that. I know about the game, and I know it was very moving, but, people were doing things all over the place. I remember, because I was doing 10 to 2 all the time. And I remember hearing somebody say on the radio, drive through neighborhoods, and if you see a church, if there's a fire truck parked outside, that means it's a funeral for a fireman. Stop the car and go in. We don't want these people to think they're alone. And I did. I would just drive, to the stadium, but I would go in different neighborhoods in Astoria. And you know what, Max? Mm-hmm. There wasn't one church I went in that wasn't filled to the rafters with people, strangers, because everybody heard that. And every time I could see it, every time there was a fire truck, everyone that was anywhere around, you'd see the cars pull into a parking space or into the lot of the church. And there wasn't one. I probably went to 6 or 7. And they were just filled to the rafters. And I just felt, because I heard it, I said, we don't want them to feel like they're alone. Mm-hmm. And I hope that helped. I really hope that helped, because you felt so helpless.
Yeah. But sports was a big part in the healing process, especially when the Yankees came back, because when you hear about it, the Yankees were out of town. So that's why everyone goes to the Mets game right away.
Right. Well, I remember because Boston also, one of the planes that went into the tower was filled with Bostonians. There was one of the department stores had and I remember I knew a lot of people who knew people that were on that plane. It was filled with 20 or 30 women that had come to New York for a convention. So Boston was hit by this too, and everybody knew people. And it was an amazing time to be in Fenway Park and to watch them, um, try to commemorate this. And the White Sox did a great job too.
Mhm.
They do, because I remember that. And then, every place the Yankees went, it was very hard for them because every place the Yankees went for that month, the city they were in wanted to do something. And so they had commemoration every single time, and they'd have flags. I remember Ripken on one side and Roger Clemens on the other side. They just did it. Clemens did almost all of the. He was very into this and what he could do to help, and he was always on one side, and the biggest star of whoever the team was that they were playing. But it was very hard on the Yankees because they have to go through the emotion every single city they went to. And they were glad to do it, and everybody was wonderful, but you could see that it took an emotional toll. And that of course was, I thought there was no way on earth that anyone would let the Yankees lose that World Series. I thought right till the end when I was preparing to go on the field, that it was just meant to be because of that. But it was tough on them. It was tough, and I think that, I know the Mets and Bobby Valentine and Piazza and the whole thing, and it's wonderful, and they're going to be a big part of that because it was New York. But I am really looking forward to September 11th, the 20th anniversary. We are going to be at Citi Field, and that should be an extraordinary game. And I don't know what the Mets have in store, and I don't know if they've talked to the Yankees. They probably have, but that'll be a Saturday. It's that whole weekend, and I believe that the 11th is that Saturday. I'm pretty sure, but whatever it is, I know it's going to be extraordinary.
Mhm. It's going to be important. And speaking of other important times in New York Yankee history was when Derek Jeter retired, calling that last game. That was probably one of the most important games ever that you ever called because this is it. This was his last game in Yankee Stadium in
Well,
2014.
you know what? I am proud. On my wall in back of me, I have a picture. I was his last interview. I waited till everybody was done, and we were in. You mean the one at Fenway Park,
Mhm.
right? Or you mean the one at Yankee Stadium? His
The one
last
at Yankee Stadium.
one at Yankee Stadium, because we went to Boston. He finished
That's
it.
right. Mhm.
And the one, well, that was unbelievable because of how it happened, because they had everybody, they brought out Mitsui and Joe and Posada was there, and Tito, everyone was there, and I was in the tunnel waiting to go out to interview Jeter. Right, this is the ninth inning when David Robertson blows the game, and I'm standing with Joe Torre, and these are little things that you would know, but I'm standing with Torre and Pettit and Matsui and Mo and Joe. As soon as it happens, his face doesn't change, and he says, "Mo, get up." Get warm, and so we're all there, and Mariano's pretending he's getting up to go in. But then after they tied it, gee, I'm figuring, you know what? He's going to get another at bat. Oh my God, he's going to get another at bat. And, and I'm down in the tunnel with Joe and all of the core four, and we're standing there and we're like laughing. And then Joe says, of course, of course. It was so moving, and he was so emotional that day. He lost his batting gloves at the beginning. It was the only day I've ever seen Derek Jeter totally not buttoned up. He couldn't find his batting gloves. He went in. I know that before the game, he went into one of the in the bathroom and cried. It was very tough for him. Very tough for him. And I know after the game, I've never seen his mother cry in 20 years. We were all very close to Dottie and Dr. Charles, and she was there, and it was the only time. She's a tough lady, wonderful lady, and I'd never seen her cry. And it was then, and it was just a remarkable day. But the game that I was thinking of in Fenway Park, Jeter would have not played another game had it not been that the Yankees were going to Boston. He said, "I owe it to them." And he said it's only Boston, because and they showed him. Oh my goodness, did they roll out the red carpet? Everybody came. Bobby Orr came, or I mean, the whole world came. Brady came. I mean, it was just an extraordinary day. They gave him a piece of the wall that had his number in it. That was also the day that Bernie came and played Take Me Out to the Ball Game, and everybody in the stands, Boston, they were holding hands and swaying back and forth and singing with Bernie Williams in the middle of the field at Fenway Park because it was Jeter's last game. And the picture I was referring to, I waited till everybody talked to him. And I said, I want to be last. And he said, okay, because I've known him since he was 18. And he gave the last interview to me. And at the end, he hugs me. And all I could think of to say was, well done, my friend. Just well done. And it was, I get still very emotional about, when you watch someone's entire career. John Sterling called every hit Derek Jeter ever had. Every single one.
Yeah, that's right.
Every save of Mariano's. It's an extraordinary thing to watch someone from the time they're 18 till the time they're 40 and see everything and watch it happen, and then it's over. And I don't think we'll ever have those days. I won't see it, but I'm sure there'll be another group, but it won't be like this. That was an extraordinary group.
It was, and it's been rough for the Yankees ever since, and it's been a difficult season. They took a hard loss last night against the Rays, and
well, they got two new parts, so they finally got in there. But this is it's a different game, Max. They play it differently, and different things are important, and it's it's just different. It's just different.
Let's see how things pan out with Gallo and Rizzo. I know Yankee fans are stoked to have them a part of the team now, and we'll see what happens. But most importantly, I think, would there ever be a 30-30 documentary or an autobiography that we can expect from you? Anything in the works? Because you're an important piece of sports history.
Well, not that anyone has asked me to do so. No. That's another thing that has changed. There is really, as you get a little older, you become kind of invisible, and it's all new, and it's all whatever. So, but nobody has approached me to do that. So, no, they've moved on to younger people. It's okay. It's okay. I know what I've done, and there are people like you out there that also know.
Mm-hmm. I think that's disgraceful that they haven't, but
that's all right. Don't worry about it.
It's not fair though.
But start doing documentaries on you and stuff, that means it's over. I'm not quite ready to be over yet.
Mm-hmm. Well, they did the 30 for 30 for Mike and the Mad Dog, and Chris is still going at Sirius XM.
Well, but it's Mike and the Mad Dog.
Yeah.
There will never be another thing like Mike and the Mad Dog. That was once in a lifetime lightning and thunder that struck and stayed for 20 years. That's never going to happen again. Yeah. I mean, that is just, for that was the perfect time, the perfect place, and they were the perfect people to do it together. And, that doesn't stay because the world changes. Mm-hmm. So the people that grew up on Mike and the Mad Dog are now not listening to that kind of sport. They're not doing that anymore because they've got lives. You have lives and kids and grandkids, and you can't sit all afternoon and listen to Mike and the Mad Dog. So it's now a different generation, and they want to hear something else. But Mike and the Mad Dog might be as important a show as ever was on. The people like Don Imus was like the first of it way back in the 70s. There are people that mark change in an industry, and they're always the first, because after Imus was Howard Stern and Opie and Anthony and all these people, but it was always Imus. And Mike and the Mad Dog, there's a lot of duos now. None of them are Mike and the Mad Dog.
No, you got that right. It was once in a lifetime. What are some of your predictions for the rest of the season, especially with the trade deadline today? Do you think they make a move for a pitcher?
I know they're trying. They're not done. If they're done, it's not because they want to be done. There were all kinds of moves about maybe getting a shortstop, moving Glaber back to second, where he probably belongs, and doing it that way. I think getting Gallo, Rizzo, by the way, is as much about. And by the way, Anthony Rizzo is everything right about baseball. Everything. I mean, he is the kind of guy that you would, you'd bring home to your parents. If you were a girl, you'd want as your brother. You'd want. Anthony Rizzo is one of the best people on this earth. And I've only met him a couple of times, but when I have, what I I've given him awards for what he's done. It's quite extraordinary, and he'll be fine. He'll be wonderful here for this year. His wife is from Connecticut, and he's got a lot of family in the New York area. He's going to be wonderful here. So as soon as they went to get a first baseman, then you knew that DJ was going back to second. So Gleyber is going to stay at first. And by the way, here's what was the problem for the beginning of the season. And I know people have gotten down on Brett Gardner, Rugi Odor for not hitting, etc. This is not what they were supposed to do. Brett Gardner was supposed to be here, be a fourth or a fifth outfielder, probably a fourth outfielder. It is not Brett Gardner's fault that Aaron Hicks gets hurt every year. And Brett Gardner has played as many games as has Aaron Judge. I mean, that is wrong. He's 38 years old. I mean, he's doing the best he can. I mean, he's not supposed to do that. No. Rugi Odor was supposed to be a lefty bat off the bench, come in, play twice a week, and give LeMahieu a day, give Gleyber a day. You'd move Urshela to short, and then Rugi could play third, or LeMahieu could play third, and Rugi could play second. That's how it was supposed to happen. They weren't supposed to be the two lefties on this team. No. I mean, they're not O'Neill and Giambi. I mean, I don't understand why people are getting on these guys. I think for what they've done, for what they've had, and people going in and out, and Stanton never playing the field, and Judge on his load management, I think they've done a remarkable job to just stay in this. They need a starting pitcher, and they need the back of this bullpen to pitch like the back of this bullpen. And and that's another thing. And injuries happen to everybody, and I'm not saying that that's why. Zach Britton hasn't pitched all year. It's going to take him a while to get there. Darren O'Day was supposed to be in the back of that bullpen. He didn't pitch all year, and now he's gone. So two big pieces. I think Loizaga has done remarkably well considering what he was last year and the year before, and the fact that he's 24, 25. You got a pitcher now. They were lucky, and if anybody tells you that they thought Lucas Litke was going to do this, they're lying, since the guy hadn't pitched in 6 years. I think the people that they've had to count on have done remarkably well. There are some that have done remarkably poorly, and you are going to have pitchers get through. You have to, when the most consistent pitcher on your staff right now, the most consistent pitcher is Jordan Montgomery and Jameson Tyone. Is that's right. The project. Jameson Tyone is not supposed to be the guy you look to say, okay, and now he has done exactly what the Yankees thought he was going to do. That with tweaking the wind up a little bit and tweaking what he's doing, and now he's morphed into both the pitcher he was in Pittsburgh, which was quite something, got hurt all the time, and what the Yankees want him to do. So now he's both, and he's now starting to give you innings. I really believe that Garrett Cole is good enough that he's going to figure this out. With whatever's going on with him, he's going to have to figure it out. Yeah. And and everybody has those things, and Chapman is going to have to figure it out. And if Garrett Cole is not Garrett Cole, and Aroldis Chapman is not Aroldis Chapman, forget the season anyway. But I think they will. I think they're pushing it. I think this is going to give this team. I know everybody's really excited that these two guys are walking in the door. Yeah. I know they are. And by the way, just anybody that's listening and is going to concentrate on Joey Gallo and his strikeouts, he's on base 40% of the time. Got it? 40. I don't care how he gets there. And he does strike out. Yes, he does. But he also walks. He really is one of those true three players. Strikeout, walk, or home run, where the ball, fielder doesn't touch the ball. By the way, better arm than Aaron Judge. Ahead of Aaron Judge in throwing runners out at the plate. He's an extraordinary athlete. He steals bases. They got something here, and they have him for another year. Rizzo's a rental, but Joey Gallo is not. Yeah.
I think as long as Cole and Chapman shape up, I think the Yankees are going to be in a good place.
Now, all you got to do is get there. As Joe Torre used to say, it's all a crapshoot once you get into the playoffs. And all they got to do is get there. Garrett Cole figures it out. He's game one, and we go on to the series, and all will be right with the world.
Yes. And let's hope that.
Or not.
Yeah. Let's hope that happens. If not, we'll be looking forward to the next season here. And Suzyn Waldman, is there anything else you'd love to tell my audience here today?
I think I've covered just about
Yeah.
by the way, I want everybody to know we're really trying with these remote broadcasts. It's awful. It's really awful. But now I know I can do anything because I called a no hitter from my house, and it's just it's tough. And when people talk about when John misses, what's happening to radio is really appalling, and nobody seems to care. and and every radio announcer is tired of it and sick of it, and we're trying so hard to deliver a good product, but you're at the mercy of some cameraman in some city that you don't know, and some are better than others. There's no problem in Boston, but you can't see. I mean, and if you try and call a base, just try it. Try and call a baseball game off of what you're seeing on your television. You can't see who scored. You can't see where the ball is. You can't see if there's a shift. You can't see where you will see where the ball lands, but that's all. You won't see where the runner is. It's really, really hard. And I think every a radio announcer who does baseball in this country should just stop for a minute, take a deep breath, and give themselves a gold star in the middle of their forehead, because every one of us are really trying to make it a good product. And I know the fans care, and it's really too bad that we care more than baseball.
And that's important. That's why we respect you, because you do care. It's important.
Well, the fans do. I mean,
Yeah, they do too.
Your radio broadcast more than TV, because you can see it. Your radio broadcasters and radio personalities are your conduits from the team to the fan. And if I can't see and I can't talk to somebody, how do I know? All I know is what we see on those stupid Zooms. And that's, you can't follow up. You can't ask another question. You can't, and they don't give you, think about the players. Players are sitting in a room looking into a camera. They don't know who they're talking to.
No.
I mean, you can see, like on a Zoom, you can see one person when the person starts to talk. So yesterday, Garrett Cole is sitting, looking at an iPad or a computer, just him on the screen until, for example, Meredith unmute. You hear that all the time on the Zooms. Meredith unmute. Then he can see Meredith. That's all. He doesn't know who else is sitting there. He doesn't know who's writing what down. It's all so stilted, and baseball is not like the other sports.
No.
You have to have a connection. It's a human connection. In football, it's different. You love your quarterback and you know certain people, but you don't know the whole team. I mean, every Yankee fan in the world knows as much about Albert Abreu as he does about Garrett Cole. That's what it is. And the football team, you don't know who the third lineman is.
No.
You might if you study it, but
that's right.
What I mean. But it's different. So if I can't tell you what's on the expression of Garrett Cole when he went out and blew that game yesterday, because I'm not there. I can only see what I see on a Zoom. And he's, when you're in the clubhouse and talking to him, I can see his eyes. I can see the pain in his eyes. But in a Zoom, he says the right things, but I don't know what he's feeling. And that's the thing that fans lose. And that's the thing that I want everybody to know, that we're really trying. And it's, I'm not complaining. I mean, I got a job and I'm doing the best I can, but the fans lose in this. They really do. And it's not right. It's not right. And I don't know when it's going to go back to normal. I don't know. I know it's not this year. Hopefully if there's playoffs, we'll get to travel. I don't know.
Yeah. It's very unfortunate. Suzyn Waldman, I want to thank you for coming on the show. I had a great time talking with you, and this was history, and the listeners do enjoy this.
Thank you. Say hello to everybody at St. John's, my favorite place. I hope the gym still looks the same. If they've changed it, don't tell me. It's alumni, right? Alumni?
It's Carnesecca Arena now.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's okay. That's a change you can make. All right. Carnesecca Arena. Yes. Yeah. It's a wonderful place. I have wonderful memories there.
Yes, and I didn't even know that, so I'm St. John's fans are happy.
You weren't even born. Your parents probably weren't.
Yeah, no.
They were, in high school somewhere. But Max, thank you. This was delightful. I'm glad we got to be together.
Yes, I want you to enjoy the rest of your day, and let's go Yankees.
Thank you. Yes. Thanks a lot.
Yes, bye, Suzyn.
Bye, Max. Thank you.
Yes.